3 sisters were being auctioned to drunken settlers in a saloon. Then a rancher kicked down the door. The wind moved slowly across the dry frontier town, carrying dust through empty streets and past buildings that looked tired from years of sun and struggle. It was late afternoon, the kind of quiet hour when people either rested or searched for trouble. Wooden signs creaked gently above shops, and a few horses stood tied near the watering trough, their heads low and eyes half closed. From a distance the town looked peaceful, but beneath that stillness lived tension that everyone felt but rarely spoke about. At the far end of the main street stood a large saloon. Its swinging doors were worn and scratched, and laughter drifted out mixed with the sound of glasses clinking together. Inside, men gathered to forget their worries or to make bad decisions that felt like courage after too much drink. Smoke filled the air, and the smell of strong liquor lingered in every corner. That afternoon, however, something felt different. 3 young sisters stood near the back of the room, close together as if they were a single shadow instead of separate people. Their clothes were simple and worn from travel, and dust covered the hems of their dresses. The eldest sister kept her shoulders straight, her face calm even though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She had learned long ago that showing fear only invited more pressure from those who wanted to control others. Her eyes moved carefully around the room, studying every face. The middle sister stood beside her, watching everything with sharp attention. She noticed the way some men whispered while staring at them, the way others avoided looking directly at them as if they felt guilt but did not know how to stop what was happening. Her mind worked quickly, searching for any small opportunity to escape or change their fate. The youngest sister stayed closest to the eldest, her fingers gripping her sister's sleeve. She tried to appear brave, but her eyes revealed her fear. She had never imagined standing in a place like this, surrounded by strangers who saw them not as people but as something to be traded. Still, she remained silent, trusting her sisters to guide her through whatever came next. The saloon owner leaned against the bar, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. He smiled too easily, as if he enjoyed the attention more than anything else. Some men laughed at his words, while others nodded slowly, caught between curiosity and hesitation. The room felt heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Outside, the sky stretched wide and pale above the town. A lone rider approached from the distant road, moving at a steady pace. The rancher had been traveling for hours, dust covering his coat and hat. He was not looking for trouble, only passing through on his way back to his land beyond the hills. Yet as he entered town, he sensed something unusual. People moved quietly, avoiding certain areas, and conversation stopped when he walked past. He paused near a water trough, letting his horse drink. 2 older men stood nearby, speaking in low voices. They did not notice him listening as they mentioned the saloon and something happening inside that made them uncomfortable. "Don't feel right," one of them muttered. "Maybe not," the other replied, "but no one wants to get involved." The rancher remained silent, though their words stayed in his mind. He thanked the men with a nod and continued toward the saloon, guided more by instinct than curiosity. Inside, the tension grew stronger. The eldest sister spoke quietly to her siblings, her voice calm despite the noise around them. She reminded them to stay together no matter what happened. The middle sister nodded, her eyes never stopping their careful scan of the room. The youngest swallowed hard but managed a small smile, trying to appear stronger than she felt. A few settlers argued near a table, their voices rising and falling as if they were debating something important. One man shook his head and walked away, clearly uncomfortable. Another laughed loudly, trying to make light of the situation. The mixture of reactions showed that not everyone agreed with what was happening, but few had the courage to stand up against it. The saloon owner raised his voice again, attempting to keep control of the room. His words sounded confident, but there was a nervous edge beneath them, as if he worried someone might challenge him. He moved closer to the sisters, speaking to them in a tone that felt more like a command than a conversation. The eldest sister responded politely but firmly, refusing to lower her dignity.
Outside, the rancher reached the wooden walkway in front of the saloon.
He paused before entering, listening to the sounds from within. Laughter mixed with shouting, and something about it felt wrong. He adjusted his hat slightly, his expression calm but focused. He pushed the doors open just enough to look inside. Immediately he noticed the sisters standing apart from everyone else. They did not belong in that place. Their posture and quiet strength made that clear. He watched for a moment, observing rather than acting. Years of hard living had taught him that understanding a situation mattered more than rushing into it blindly. The eldest sister noticed him first. Their eyes met briefly, and though no words were spoken, she sensed that he was not like the others. He did not stare with curiosity or judgment. Instead, he looked at the entire scene as if measuring it, searching for truth beneath the surface. The rancher stepped fully inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. Conversation slowed as some people turned to see who had entered. He walked toward the bar without hurry, his boots echoing softly against the wooden floor. He ordered a drink but did not touch it, keeping his attention on the room. Meanwhile, the middle sister felt a small shift in the atmosphere. The presence of someone new, someone calm, created a ripple of uncertainty among the settlers. Even those who had been loud moments before lowered their voices slightly. The youngest sister dared to hope, though she did not understand why. Something about the rancher's quiet confidence made her feel less alone. Time seemed to stretch as tension slowly built. A chair scraped loudly across the floor, breaking the silence. One of the settlers asked a question that caused murmurs to spread. The saloon owner responded quickly, attempting to maintain authority. Yet the rancher's presence changed the balance of power without him saying a single word. Outside, the sun began to lower toward the horizon, casting long shadows through the windows. Dust floated in the golden light, turning the air almost dreamlike despite the seriousness of the moment. The eldest sister took a slow breath. She realized that the situation could change at any second, for better or worse. She prepared herself mentally, ready to protect her sisters no matter what happened. The rancher finally turned from the bar and walked closer to the center of the room. His steps were steady, neither aggressive nor hesitant. Conversation stopped entirely as people watched him approach. The moment felt like the beginning of something important, a turning point that none of them fully understood yet. The room grew quiet as the rancher stepped forward, his boots making slow, steady sounds against the wooden floor. Conversations faded into whispers, and even the men who had been laughing loudly moments before turned their attention toward him. He did not rush or show anger. Instead, he moved with calm confidence, as if he had walked into difficult situations many times before. The three sisters watched him closely. The eldest felt a strange sense of relief, though she did not fully understand why. The middle sister studied every detail, his posture, the way he kept his hands relaxed at his sides, the way his eyes moved across the room without fear. The youngest sister felt her heart beating faster, hope slowly rising where fear had lived only moments before. The saloon owner straightened his posture behind the bar, trying to hide his unease. He forced a smile, speaking loudly as if to remind everyone that he was still in charge. "Welcome," he said with a wide gesture. "You came at a lively time." The rancher nodded politely but did not smile. His gaze moved toward the sisters, before returning to the owner. "Seems like something serious is happening here," he said calmly. His voice was not loud, yet everyone heard him clearly. A few settlers shifted in their chairs. Some avoided eye contact, while others leaned forward with curiosity. The atmosphere felt heavier, as though the air itself waited for the next words. The owner laughed lightly, trying to dismiss the tension. "Just business," he replied. "Nothing that concerns outsiders." The rancher tilted his head slightly. "Everything that happens in a town concerns someone," he said quietly. His tone remained respectful, but there was strength beneath it. The eldest sister noticed how he never raised his voice or showed aggression. Instead, he used calm words that made people think. One man near a table chuckled and raised his glass. "Let it be," he said. "No need to spoil the evening." But another man beside him frowned, clearly uncomfortable. He looked at the sisters and then down at his drink, as if regret had started to settle in. The rancher stepped closer to the center of the room, placing himself between the sisters and the crowd without making a show of it. His presence created a quiet barrier, and even those who had been loud before seemed unsure how to react. "What's your name?" the owner asked, attempting to regain control. "Just a traveler passing through," the rancher replied. "But I heard enough outside to know something feels wrong." The middle sister felt a spark of courage growing inside her. She glanced at her eldest sister, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. The youngest watched silently, holding on to hope like a fragile thread. The owner's smile tightened. "Nothing wrong here," he insisted. "Everyone agreed to be here." The rancher turned slowly, looking at the men gathered around. "Did everyone agree?" he asked gently. The question hung in the air. Some settlers shifted uncomfortably. One man cleared his throat but said nothing. Another stared at the floor. Silence can sometimes speak louder than words, and that silence began to change the mood of the room. The eldest sister spoke quietly but firmly. "We didn't come here by choice," she said. Her voice trembled slightly but remained steady enough for everyone to hear. The owner quickly interrupted, laughing loudly as if to drown out her words. Now, he said. "No need for stories." But the rancher raised a hand slightly, not as a threat but as a request for patience. "Let her speak," he said. His calm tone carried authority, and surprisingly, many of the settlers nodded. The middle sister took a breath, feeling strength from the rancher's presence. She began to explain how their family had struggled after their father's passing, how promises had been made to help them, and how those promises had slowly turned into pressure. As she spoke, the room grew quieter. Even those who had seemed eager before now looked uncertain. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows gently. The sound reminded everyone how isolated the town was, and how important it was for people to stand up for what was right. The owner tried to laugh again, but his voice sounded forced. "Everyone here understands how things work," he said. "Life is hard. Deals are made."
The rancher nodded slowly.
"Life is hard," he agreed. "But that doesn't mean people stop being human." Those words settled deeply into the room. One older settler stood up slowly. "Maybe we should rethink this," he muttered, glancing at the sisters. Another man shook his head, still unsure. "It's not our problem," he said quietly, though his voice lacked conviction. The rancher did not push or argue loudly. Instead, he walked calmly to a nearby table and rested his hand lightly against the wood. "Every choice we make becomes our problem eventually," he said. "That's how towns grow or fall apart." The youngest sister felt tears gathering in her eyes, but held them back. She had expected anger or loud confrontation, but instead she saw something stronger: quiet courage. The owner's patience began to fade. "Enough," he snapped. "You've said your piece. Either sit down or leave." The rancher looked at him calmly. "I'll leave when I'm sure everyone here is safe," he replied. His words were simple, yet they changed everything. A murmur spread through the room. Some settlers nodded slightly, agreeing without speaking. Others looked unsure, caught between loyalty to the owner and their own conscience. The middle sister felt her fear slowly turning into determination. She realized that courage could be shared, that one person standing up could help others find their own strength. Outside, more townspeople began gathering near the saloon, drawn by the unusual silence inside. Shadows moved past the windows, adding pressure to the situation. The eldest sister straightened her posture, feeling stronger than before. She no longer felt completely alone. The rancher remained still, allowing the room to settle around his words. He did not rush to force a conclusion. Instead, he waited, giving people time to think. Finally, one settler placed his glass down firmly. "I'm done with this," he said, stepping back. "Doesn't feel right anymore." Another man followed, moving away from the center of attention. Slowly, the balance began to shift. The owner's confident expression started to crack. He realized that control was slipping away, not through force but through growing doubt. The rancher looked around the room once more, his voice steady. "No one loses dignity today," he said quietly. The words hung in the air like a promise. The silence inside the saloon felt heavier than before, as if the air itself had stopped moving. No one laughed now. No glasses clinked together. Even the music that usually played in the corner had faded into nothing. The rancher stood calmly, neither proud nor aggressive, simply present. His quiet confidence had already changed the mood of the room, and now everyone waited to see what would happen next. The eldest sister felt strength growing inside her. Only moments earlier she had felt surrounded by danger, but now she sensed that truth had begun to rise above fear. She looked at her younger sisters and gave them a small, reassuring nod. The middle sister understood immediately.
This was their moment to speak honestly. The saloon owner tried to regain control.
He cleared his throat loudly and stepped forward, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Everyone's getting carried away," he said. "This is just a misunderstanding." But his voice sounded different now. The confidence that once filled it had faded, replaced by tension. Some settlers noticed and exchanged uncertain glances. The rancher did not interrupt. Instead, he stepped slightly aside, giving space to the sisters. It was a silent invitation, not forcing them, but allowing them to tell their story if they wished. The middle sister took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, but she raised her head. "We came to town because we were told there was help here," she said softly. "After our father passed away, we lost our land. Someone promised to guide us, to help us find work and a place to stay." Murmurs spread through the room. A few men leaned closer, listening carefully. "But when we arrived," she continued, "the story changed. The promises became pressure. The help turned into something else." The youngest sister felt tears filling her eyes again, but this time they came from relief rather than fear. She realized that people were actually listening. One older settler spoke quietly from a table near the wall. "Who made those promises?" he asked. The sisters hesitated, glancing toward the saloon owner. His expression hardened, and he crossed his arms, waiting. The eldest sister stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "We were told that our father owed a debt," she said. "We were told that this was the only way to settle it." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Some settlers frowned, whispering to each other. One man shook his head slowly as if remembering something. The rancher watched silently, allowing the truth to unfold naturally. The older settler spoke again. "I knew your father," he said carefully. "He worked honestly. He never mentioned any debt." More murmurs followed. Doubt began spreading like a slow wave. The saloon owner laughed sharply, trying to regain control. "Memories can be wrong," he said. "People forget things." But another voice spoke up from the back. A woman who had been quietly serving drinks stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "I remember too," she said. "Their father helped half this town during the drought. He wasn't the kind of man who would leave debts unpaid." The room shifted again. Now more people looked at the sisters with sympathy rather than curiosity. The rancher finally spoke. "Sometimes truth gets buried under noise," he said calmly, "but it always finds a way back." The middle sister felt courage filling her chest. She described how they had traveled long distances trusting strangers because they had no other choice. She explained how fear had grown each day as they realized they were losing control of their own future. As she spoke, faces around the room softened. Some settlers looked ashamed, realizing they had accepted something without questioning it. One younger man stood up slowly. "I thought this was just an agreement," he said quietly. "I didn't know the full story." Another nodded in agreement. "None of us did." The saloon owner's expression darkened. He slammed his hand lightly against the bar, trying to break the rising sympathy. "Enough stories," he said. Everyone knew what they came for, but the room no longer responded the way it had before. Instead of laughter or agreement, there was only silence. The rancher walked slowly toward the center again. "Maybe it's time everyone decides what they stand for," he said gently. Outside, more townspeople gathered near the windows, curious about the strange quiet inside. Shadows moved across the glass as people tried to see what was happening. The youngest sister felt something shift inside her. For the first time since arriving in town, she felt safe enough to speak. Her voice was soft but clear. "We just wanted a chance to live honestly," she said. "We didn't come here to be treated like something less than human." Her words touched something deep in the listeners. A man near the door lowered his head, clearly moved. The owner tried again to laugh, but now it sounded forced and hollow. "You're letting emotions cloud judgment," he said. The older settler stood up firmly. "No," he replied. "We're letting truth speak." The tension rose, but it felt different now. Instead of fear, it carried determination. The rancher remained calm, watching carefully. He knew that real change happened when people chose it themselves, not when they were forced. A few settlers moved away from the center of the room, signaling they no longer supported what had been planned. Others followed slowly, unsure but influenced by the growing shift. The eldest sister felt relief washing over her. She realized that courage could spread from one person to another like light moving through darkness. Outside, the wind slowed, and the sky turned warm with evening colors. Inside, the atmosphere softened, though uncertainty remained. The saloon owner glanced around, realizing that he was losing the support he once relied on. His voice grew quieter.
"You're all making a mistake," he said,
but no one answered. Instead, the rancher spoke again, his tone calm and steady. "Mistakes happen when people stay silent," he said. "Tonight people are choosing to speak." The room felt different now, no longer a place of pressure but a space where truth had begun to take shape. The sisters stood together, stronger than before. They were no longer alone, and everyone could feel that the story had reached a turning point. The quiet inside the saloon did not feel weak anymore. Instead, it felt strong, like the moment before rain finally falls after a long, dry season. People stood in different places around the room, but their attention remained fixed on the center where the sisters and the rancher stood. No one returned to their drinks. No one laughed or joked. Something important was happening, and everyone felt it. The saloon owner looked around, trying to regain control of the situation. Earlier, he had seemed confident and loud, but now his movements appeared restless. He wiped his hands against his vest and forced another smile that felt thin and strained. "You're all overthinking this," he said, raising his voice slightly. "Nothing wrong has happened. Everyone here made their own choices." But his words did not carry the same power anymore. A few settlers exchanged looks that showed doubt instead of agreement. The shift in the room was clear. The crowd was no longer united behind him. The rancher remained calm, standing with his shoulders relaxed, watching carefully. He did not step forward aggressively or raise his voice. He simply stayed present, allowing the truth to continue shaping the moment. The eldest sister felt her heart beating steadily. Fear had not disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled her. She sensed that people were finally seeing them for who they truly were. Not strangers or objects, but human beings with stories and feelings. The middle sister noticed movement near the windows. More townspeople had gathered outside, whispering among themselves. News traveled fast in small places, and curiosity had drawn them here. Their presence added quiet pressure to the situation, reminding everyone that what happened now would not stay hidden. The youngest sister watched the rancher closely. She admired how he did not act like a hero seeking attention. Instead, he gave space for others to make their own decisions. His calmness encouraged others to speak honestly. One settler cleared his throat and stood up from his chair. "Maybe we should stop and think," he said. "If something doesn't feel right, maybe it isn't." We didn't know the full story before. The saloon owner's face tightened. "You're letting emotions guide you," he said sharply. "Business requires clear thinking." The rancher tilted his head slightly. "Clear thinking includes listening," he replied gently. A few people murmured in agreement. The owner's attempts to control the narrative seemed to slip further away. Outside, the sky darkened slightly as evening approached. Shadows stretched across the wooden floor, creating long lines that moved slowly with the setting sun. The atmosphere felt heavy but hopeful, as if something new was about to begin. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed from outside the saloon door. Everyone turned toward it. The sound broke the tension for a moment, drawing attention away from the argument. The door opened slowly, and the town sheriff stepped inside. He was an older man with steady eyes and a calm presence. He looked around carefully, sensing the unusual mood immediately.
"What's going on here?" he asked quietly.
No one answered at first. The saloon owner stepped forward quickly, eager to control the story. "Just a misunderstanding," he said. "Nothing serious." But before he could continue, the older settler who had spoken earlier stepped forward. "Sheriff," he said respectfully, "I think you should hear everyone before deciding that." The sheriff nodded slowly. "That sounds fair." He moved toward the center of the room, giving equal attention to all sides. The rancher stepped slightly back, allowing the sheriff to take the lead. The sisters felt a new wave of relief, sensing that someone with authority would listen to them. The eldest sister spoke calmly, explaining their journey and the promises that had brought them to town. She described how confusion and pressure had grown, and how they had felt trapped without support. Her voice remained steady, and each word carried honesty. The middle sister added details about conversations and agreements that did not feel fair. She spoke clearly, showing courage that surprised even herself. The youngest sister remained quiet but stood proudly beside her sisters, showing that she was no longer afraid to be seen. The sheriff listened carefully without interrupting. He occasionally nodded, asking simple questions to understand the situation fully. When the sisters finished, he turned toward the saloon owner. "Your side?" he asked. The owner spoke quickly, repeating his claim that everything had been agreed upon. But now his words sounded rushed, and he struggled to maintain the same confidence he had earlier. The sheriff watched him closely. "Agreements require honesty and fairness," he said calmly. "If either is missing, then it becomes something else." Silence filled the room again. Several settlers stepped forward one by one, sharing what they had seen or heard. Some admitted they had felt uncomfortable but had stayed silent. Others explained that they had not known the full story until now. The atmosphere shifted once more, moving toward resolution rather than conflict. The rancher remained quiet, letting the process unfold naturally. He understood that true change happened when people chose it themselves. Finally, the sheriff nodded slowly. "This situation needs to end here," he said firmly. "No one will be forced into anything they did not freely choose." Relief washed over the sisters. The eldest closed her eyes briefly, feeling tension leave her shoulders for the first time since arriving in town. The owner tried to protest, but the sheriff raised a hand gently. "Enough," he said. "We will review everything properly. For now, everyone goes home peacefully." The crowd slowly relaxed. Some settlers looked embarrassed, while others seemed relieved that the situation had ended without chaos. Chairs scraped against the floor as people began moving away from the center. The youngest sister finally allowed herself to smile, a small but genuine expression of hope. The rancher turned toward them, his voice quiet. "You're safe now," he said simply. Outside, the sky turned deep orange and purple as evening settled over the town. The wind slowed, carrying away the tension that had filled the air earlier. Inside the saloon, the atmosphere transformed from pressure to reflection. People spoke softly to one another, discussing what had happened and what it meant for their community. The sisters stood together, stronger than before. They had faced fear and uncertainty, but they had also witnessed kindness and courage from unexpected places. The night air felt cooler as people slowly left the saloon. The tension that had filled the building earlier faded, replaced by quiet conversations and thoughtful silence. Outside, lanterns began to glow along the street, casting warm light over wooden sidewalks and tired horses waiting patiently. The town felt different now, as if something important had shifted not only for the three sisters but for everyone who had witnessed the events. The eldest sister stepped outside first, taking a deep breath of fresh air. She had not realized how heavy the atmosphere inside had been until she felt the open sky above her again. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she turned to check on her younger sisters. The middle sister followed closely, her eyes still alert but softer than before. The youngest came last, pausing for a moment near the doorway as if she needed to convince herself that everything was truly over. The rancher walked out behind them, keeping a respectful distance. He did not try to take attention or praise. Instead, he simply made sure they were safe as people moved around them. Some townsfolk nodded toward him in quiet respect, while others offered gentle smiles to the sisters. The sheriff remained near the entrance, speaking calmly with a few settlers. His presence ensured that the evening would end peacefully. He gave the sisters a reassuring nod before returning to his work. The sky above the town was painted with deep shades of blue and purple, stars beginning to appear, one by one. The youngest sister looked up at them, feeling a sense of wonder she had not felt in a long time. For days, she had carried fear like a heavy weight, but now hope felt possible again. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. The eldest sister hesitated. For so long they had been focused only on surviving the moment that thinking about the future felt strange. She turned toward the rancher, unsure how to begin. He noticed their uncertainty and spoke gently. "First you rest," he said. "You've been through enough for one day." His words were simple, but they carried kindness that felt genuine. The middle sister studied him carefully, still cautious, but beginning to trust. A woman from the town approached them slowly. She had been inside the saloon earlier, quietly observing. "There's a small boarding house down the street," she said kindly. "You can stay there tonight. No charge. Everyone deserves a safe place to sleep." Gratitude filled the sisters' hearts. The eldest thanked her sincerely, and the woman smiled warmly before pointing toward the building. As they began walking, the rancher followed a few steps behind, making sure they reached safely. The wooden boards of the walkway creaked softly under their feet. The town felt calmer now, as if the earlier tension had washed away. Inside the boarding house, a gentle warmth greeted them. The owner, an older woman with kind eyes, welcomed them without asking many questions. She prepared simple rooms and offered warm food that filled the air with comforting smells. The youngest sister sat at the small table holding a cup of tea with both hands. She looked at her sisters and then at the rancher. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once. "You were brave," he replied. "All three of you." The eldest sister felt emotion rising in her chest. "You changed everything," she said. He shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You spoke the truth. People just needed to hear it." His humility made his words even more meaningful. After eating, the sisters felt exhaustion finally catching up with them. The boarding house owner showed them to their rooms, and for the first time in days, they lay down without fear of what might happen next. Morning arrived slowly, sunlight streaming through the windows and bringing warmth with it. The sisters woke feeling lighter, though still uncertain about the future. When they came downstairs, they found the rancher waiting near the door, hat in hand. "I'm heading back to my ranch," he said. "There's work there if you need it. Nothing complicated. Just honest work until you decide your next step." The offer surprised them. It was not pressure or obligation, only an opportunity. The middle sister looked at her siblings. "It might be good to start somewhere peaceful," she said. The eldest nodded slowly. "We need time to rebuild." The youngest smiled, excitement replacing fear. "I would like that." They agreed to go with him not because they felt dependent, but because they saw a chance for a fresh beginning. The journey to the ranch felt calm compared to their earlier travels. The road stretched wide under a bright sky, and the land around them felt open and free. As they rode, the rancher spoke little, allowing them space to think and breathe. When they arrived, the ranch appeared simple but welcoming. Fields spread across the land, and a small house stood near a group of trees. The quiet atmosphere felt safe. Days passed, and the sisters began adjusting to their new routine. They worked together, learning new skills and supporting each other. The eldest discovered strengths she had never realized she possessed. The middle sister found joy in solving practical problems, helping organize tasks around the ranch. The youngest laughed more often, her fear slowly replaced by confidence. The rancher remained kind but respectful, never overstepping boundaries. He treated them as equals, not as people who owed him anything. Word of what had happened in town spread slowly. Some visitors arrived offering apologies or support. The sisters accepted kindness but focused on building their own path forward. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they sat together outside the house. The sky glowed with warm colors, and the air felt peaceful. "We survived," the youngest said softly. "We did more than survive," the middle sister replied. "We changed something." The eldest looked toward the rancher, who stood nearby watching the horizon. She realized that one person's courage had created a chain reaction that helped many others find their own strength. Life continued, not perfect, but hopeful. The sisters began making plans for their future, discussing dreams they had once believed were impossible.